step number 3, which is to create our HiFi prototype. Very exciting stuff. We're now going to put in somehow of visual design, including proper typography, iconography. We're going to put background, creative shots, things like that. So before you do that, don't forget to put in your lo-fi prototype from your previous activity, which is the hero section. So we're now going to translate this into something a little bit closer to our finished product. Let's start. All right, to start with, let's duplicate this frame so we can have the exact pixel size, just like what we have done on our previous work. We have to delete what is included, Shift A, then delete. Okay, probably it's a good thing to start with the background. So just like what I kept on telling you, which you haven't seen at all, we're going to put here a creative shot. And to do that, we have to include an image. You already know how to do that. Shape tools, place image, and then browse on the creative shot. Place all. Okay, so this will now be your background for this image. You can Control X, Control V, or you can actually just drag and then it will automatically be placed. And then reshaped as you preferred. Okay, that's kind of awkward. So what we're going to do is select the frame, then change the fill color. That's one way to do it. So we now have our background. Another way to do that and give us actually more flexibility is to use plugins. Plugins are just like any other scripts that you put on Photoshop, After Effects, or even Illustrator. Figma also has those plugins. To access those plugins, you just have to go here, click, and then from components, you go to plugins, and then you have to search for PixCut Background Remover. That's the plugin that we're going to use. It has the ability to remove any background. Of course, it's not as powerful as Photoshop background remover, but it will do. So what you're going to do is click first the item that you want to remove the background. Go to plugin again, PixCut, run, and then click another run. It will start running in your background, and it now removes the background. So this time we can again put it there. See? All right. So that's how you do it. All right. So another thing that we can do is put some kind of blurry blobs here. So to do that, we are now going to use our pen tool. From your tools here, go to pen. This is your good old pen tool. Then just create a shape resembling a blob. Do not worry about it because we're going to blur it in the end. And you now have your shape. To complete this, go to this toolbar and then click done. That's it. You now have your shape. Now what we want here is not a stroke but a field. So go to fill, click the plus button, hide or remove the stroke, and then go to the fill. Then we can just copy any color from our selection here. That looks nice. All right. So from here, we're now going to use effects. So effects, just like any other effects in your Photoshop, can give a little bit more on your element. In Figma, we have drop shadow, inner shadow, layer blur, background blur. So it does what it says. We're going to use the layer blur, and then to adjust, you have to click this effect settings, right click, and then you can type manually your value or can again drag. So we're going to need a bit higher, like 200, and that's it. You can put it here, but it still locks a little bit more. We're going to use another plugin. It's called noise. So go to your plugin, search noise. Since I already have used it before, it's already here at my recents. Click run, and then you have to type the value. For us, we're going to need the full screen. That's 1440 by 1024. You can adjust accordingly depending on what you want, but if you're already satisfied with these values, click the plus or the check icon, and there's your noise, right? So if you're going to look at this, so what we want to do now is to put it on a frame. Put it on a frame, you can click Ctrl Alt G or right click, frame selection. So what it does, it puts that image into a frame. All right. So from here, what we can do is maybe we can add a little bit more blob, change its shape. We can also change if we want it to be passed through or overlay, just to give it a little more or variation. Okay, so now we now introduce the concept of frames and groups. So we have been using it for a while now, but we haven't actually discussed it. So I think it's better if we demonstrate it. We have here two elements, the overlay blob and the pass-through blob. Now, let's duplicate this first so we can have our copy. If we're going to group these two elements, we can select, then click Ctrl G or right click group selection. So it's already grouped. For this one, what we're going to do is we're going to frame it. So we're going to select Ctrl Alt G or right click and then frame selection. So this is group, this is framed. And what is now the difference? First, if you're going to look at this one, they have different icons. The icon for the group is some kind of dotted square. Meanwhile, the icon for the frame is some kind of pound symbol, a grid symbol, something like that. So one of the difference is that frames can exist by itself. Meaning, for example, if we go here to our group and then delete the elements inside the group, let's delete that, boom, the group would not exist. It will be deleted. Let's undo. Meanwhile, when you go to your frame, if you delete those elements within the frame will exist, right? So take note of that. Okay, another difference is that groups, if you scale, for example, if you want to scale it, something like that, it moves. However, when you go to frame, when you try to scale, see, it will not move according if you want to scale a frame, you have to use the scale tool. Okay, that's one of the difference. Okay, another thing is that frames have a clip content function. If you want to clip any content within this frame, you can do it by going to frame here, clip content. If you click that, everything outside the frame will be clipped. So that's the difference. Now it will now depend on how are you going to use it. But for now, I think we can make do with the group. Let's change this to red blob. And let's duplicate this. So now we're going to put it in the frame of the noise. Now if we're going to go to the frame, name it as background noise. Okay, so you can see here the blobs are in front of the noise. We can right click and then send to back, or what we can actually do is actually drag here and move them accordingly. So we can still see like the remaining blobs outside the frame because the background noise frame is not on clip content. But when we click this one, it will now be clipped. Okay, so time to put this background noise in our layer. So right now, it's already here in our lo-fi. So let's change this first to HiFi Hero. And let's change the noise from pass-through to overlay. All right, so with that, we can already see the difference. Let me put this one. See, gives a little bit more texture. Let's lower it and let's move the blobs. Won't talk too much from our content. From here, where you're going to apply your graphic design skill. That is now our background for our hero section. We can frame everything, or we can change this to background and drag or cut out creative shot. From here, we can put it inside. Take notice of the white bar. See, that shows the nesting. So from there, let's put it below the red blob here. So it's now all on the background. If we hide that, see? All right. At this juncture, I think we can lock it if we're not going to move it or make any more changes. So let's lock it for now. We now have our background. At this step, we're now going to add our navigation. Okay, to do that, we have to have some kind of copy that says product. According to client, they don't need a menu icon or hamburger icon because they don't have any other pages aside from their landing and product page, and some kind of icons to represent search, cart, and user. So to do that, we're going to upload their logo, or we can actually just copy the previous one. Let's resize. Let's say 40. And then to add some icons, we are again going to need some plugin called Iconify. Search Iconify, click run, then type the icon that you want to add. For example, we need first a user. Probably this will do. Okay. You can click import or you can actually just drag there. Another is a cart. Search icon. It's good. Last one is search. Search icon. Boom. It's nice. Put it there. Kindly take note that you have to, of course, follow some visual design guideline here, such as they should have the same stroke, they should have the same size, they should have the same cup. Let's change first their size from their mix. We have to maybe 24 by 24. That's kind of a standard. And this two seems like they have the same stroke size, but this one not. Maybe we can adjust this to 1.5. Okay, I think that will do. And since they are on a dark UI, it's better if they will be, of course, filled with white. Let's put it here for now. Last element is, of course, the copy that says products. Okay, Sora regular 20. I think that's good enough. Then kindly take note that instead of fixed size, it should be on auto width because it will have to adjust. Shift G. Let's check their position. Okay, at this juncture, we are now going to use auto layout in terms of elements. We have introduced auto layouts in creating our button. Right now, we're going to use it to create an auto layout on this navbar. Why? Because if you click the hero icon, the hero frame rather, and then if you drag, as you can see, the image will be cut. So what we want to have is we want it to adjust. Okay, to start with, we have to let's just put this outside of the frame so we can see it better. Then let's frame everything. Control Alt G. Then this is text. Control Alt G. It's now on frame. And these three should have their own frame. The reason for that is because we want them to adjust in respect with each other, plus in respect with the other elements. So we have to have them on their own frame selection, or Shift A rather, to have their auto layout, have their distance from equalizer as 24, it is standard, and now they're all in frame. This one is on auto layout frame. Okay, what we want to do now is to select everything, then click again Shift A. Then let's put it here, show the frame, the layout, the grid, make it centered. All right, so they are now on auto layout. However, let's check if they will adjust accordingly. No, still it's being cut. What we have to do right now is to change. They are now on tucked. When we say puck, they have the space between, but when we adjust the frame, see, they will not adjust. But if it's on space between, what you are changing is the space between those elements, see? And if you change the frame size, it will adjust accordingly. That's what we want. Now, still, it won't adjust according to our hero section. So what we want to do is select, and we're now going to introduce the concept of constraints. So you've been seeing the blue lines for a while now, this one. It means that they are aligning themselves or anchoring themselves on those parts. For example, this one, they're anchoring itself at the top. This one anchoring itself to the left. That is why when we move this one, when we move the hero frame, it's being cut because it's not anchored here. So to do that, we have to change our constraint, which is on here. So you can change here, or you can actually go here and then click left and right. Right now, if you're going to see, we now have our blue line there. And if we move, it will now adjust accordingly. Of course, it will have some kind of limitation. See, it can only go so far based on your design. Okay. I cheated a while ago. I already added some constraints on the background image, but if you're going to see on the previous version, it doesn't adjust. So to fix that, go to your background. For example, go to this background and then add a constraint instead of left, do left and right. Then it will adjust accordingly. Okay, so that's how you do it. All right, now we have our nav bar, we have our background image. The only thing that we're missing would be the header, the subheader, and of course, the buttons. We're now going to add our hero header and our hero subheader. Okay, so at this step, you should have your visual style guide design. What do I mean by that? So this is an example of a visual style guide I created on one of my projects. So it can be as complicated as this. For example, headline 1 is 64, 48, things like that. And it depends on your project, of course. It will take much more time in creating your visual style guide. For the sake of this discussion, I have created a very simple one. This one. Okay, it doesn't look so much as what I have shown you a while ago, but it will do. So our header would be Canit 48. Our subheader will be, our header 2 will be Canit light 48, and our body copy would be light 32. So in Figma, you can actually add styles. So to add a style, you create your, of course, your visual style first. You select it and then go to text, click the style, create style, and then this one would be your style type header 1, and that will already be appear as your styles. If I click anywhere without any elements, those style would appear here. For example, let's add another one, header 2, create style. You now have your header 2 style, and that will be added there. And if we add our body copy, body 1, create style, and click, and that's where it will be as well. So there are styles, made your life easier. So when we actually put anything here, for example, we put our copy, the new generation of phone cases, that's our copy. Then you change it to header 1, it will automatically change. So that's, then you can center this and then change. At this juncture, you can now be picky on its style, because at this stage, it should already look like the end product. So for example, that is your header. And let's add another text. It will be body 1. Maybe reversing the virus, that's their tagline. Don't judge. Okay, so now we have our body and our header. So we are going to shift A on these two elements so we can adjust their distance from one another. 18 would be good. Also, the distances between elements, if you're going to ask, what should be the distance between this element to this element? What should be the distance between these elements? It will depend on your style guide as well. So that's how important a style guide is. You have to define them before you actually work, or actually you can do it as you work on and create your style sheet. Okay, that's it for creating the copy for our hero section. We're now going to create our buttons. Create our buttons, we have to introduce the concept of component. But first, where's our button? So we have already done a button a while ago, but just to refresh our memory, let's start it from scratch. For example, see more or buy now. So in terms of buttons, you have a lot of you have a lot of styles. For example, you have primary, secondary, tertiary. You have an active button, hover button, ghost button. But we're not going to dwell with so much on those concepts. We're going to just focus on two, the primary and the secondary button. So for the buy now button, since this is the primary button, it should be more attractive to the eye. So let's add an auto layout to this text. Shift A, maybe 4, then 12. Again, we can see that unless we add a fill. For our fill, let's do our red. Again, you should have defined this before you start. Then change the font color probably to white. That looks nice. Maybe a corner radius of about 2. And then let's rename this primary button. Okay. Now we're going to create another variation. Let's just copy that, duplicate, rename this to secondary button. Then let's change this to say see more. But it doesn't matter what text would you put there. Now, since this is secondary button, it should not take so much attention as the primary button. Maybe let's change the fill to white, some kind of gray. Let's decrease its opacity. And then maybe we can also put some outlines on the two. Stroke white. So much, just a hint. Okay. Of course, our background is black, so let's check if that would look good. Be the red, maybe a little bit brighter. Something like that. Okay. Put it back here on the components. Now, we are now going to create our components. So what are components? So you can think of them as variations. How do we create a component? Choose the element that you want to create a component with. And then, as you can see here, this middle panel here will change. Click there. So this one would be boolean or mask. We don't need that for now. Click this create component. And that's now your primary button. Create a secondary button. Click. That's now your secondary button. And here's how powerful it is. When you select those two, you can combine them as variants. So when you click combine as variants, you now have your first property. There are a lot more tutorials about property, but we are just on the basics, so that will do. And if we duplicate this one, you're now going to have what we call a component. So this is your primary component, and this is your a copy of your component. So when you change anything here from your primary, for example, you change the color, you change your mind, instead of red, you want it black. See, everything that you do will be cascaded. So if you have created like 100 buttons, you don't have to change all of those buttons one by one. Same goes from here. If you want to change it to anything, any color, that will change as well. Another power of creating component is, for example, you change your mind. Instead of a primary button, you want this to be a secondary button. You can do that by going to this property, then click secondary, and then it will change. See? Okay. So let's apply that. Let's go here. Let's add our primary button and our secondary button. It was not secondary. So you can do that. Click there. Primary, secondary. See? And let's add an auto layout in between these two. Select both. Shift A, 18. And then let's center it. So this is not centered. Center it. And whatever you do here, if you want to change it, see more, you want it to be like learn more, it will adjust accordingly. Okay. So we now have our button. Now what we want to do is to create a auto layout between these two, so we can like manage this distance, their distance within each other. Click this this auto layout frame, click this frame, then Shift A, boom. You now have an auto layout. You can manage the distance. For example, you just want it to be 24. It can be 24. And let's also add a constraint. Should be center. Okay. So that's how you create a adjusting frame. At this juncture, you can change. For example, if you want to increase the size of this header, you can do so. You can actually adjust your text style. For example, header 1, instead of 48, you want it to be 64. You can change that. But of course, it's already framed, so you have to adjust it as well. For now, this will do. And you can just make minor changes here. You can adjust, for example, this distance, but it's up to your visual design judgment. But that's it. That's how you complete a whole visual design of a hi-fi. Next up, we're going to discuss how to create it as a prototype. We are now done creating the hero section of our Serif landing page. At this juncture, we're going to introduce basic prototyping, probably give some hover state on these buttons, and create another page whereas the products will be launched, maybe our product page as well. Fortunately, I have already created a whole landing page and product page section. So we're going to prototype this in a while. Let's start first with creating hover states on the following buttons. To do that, go to your components. You click that purple dot dash line, and then you just drag. So what we're going to do is we're going to create variants. To do that, right click, hold Alt, and then create a copy. So this will now be a variant 3. So we can rename it from here. We can call it primary button dash hover slash hover. So that will now be primary button slash hover. And then this would be secondary button slash hover. Again, kindly remember there are a lot more tutorials because it is a little bit complicated. We're just going to introduce its functionality. So from here, what we can do is we can change the states. So for example, when you hover at something, it should indicate that you are hovering. That's one of the heuristic principle. So maybe you can just change its fill and add a drop shadow. So something like that. Maybe we can decrease its shadow about 15%. Good. This one a little bit darker, and then add again another drop shadow, something like that. Now at this juncture, they won't have any interaction. For example, when you go here, and then let's play it. So that play button will actually play the frame. So for now, we chose that, and we look at this button, it doesn't interact yet because we did not connect our hover state and our passive state. So to do that, what we're going to do is from design, go to prototype, and then if you're going to look at your border, you're going to see a little icon there, a plus icon. When you click that, and then you connect it to the hover state, you are now creating its interaction. Now, what interaction? You can have it on click and then change to, or you can also, while hovering, it will change to this state. Let's do that for here as well. Unclick and then while hovering. Now, when we go back to our prototype, you can see that it changes, right? So it will just indicate that you are hovering. So that's how you prototype buttons. How about moving from one page to another? For example, we want our products here. This is a text link. We want it to connect to this product page, another page. So to do that, go again to the prototype. And then since this is nested, you have to click for many times there. Then once you go to the frame that contains the products, what you're going to do is you're going to again drag and then connect it to the product page. And then instead of while hovering, you're going to choose on click. Now you have different types of animations. You have slide in from left, right, or you can also have instant. You can also have it dissolve, instant. All right. So you can connect many buttons or text links with the same principle. By now, then probably this view products should also connect on click. We now have created those buttons indicated by those lines. It means that when you click those buttons, they will redirect to this product page. Okay, so let's do that. Flow, it's changed. Flow would be whenever you see this little rectangle here, it means that will be the start of the flow of your screen. So it's a good idea to change this. For example, landing page 3. When you click the play button from there or from here, same. This page here would be on preview mode. See? And now, if you hover on those parts that you have created an interaction, they can direct you to the product page. Right. So right now, we don't have any more interaction. Aside from that, maybe we can create another interaction from the logo. Means you have to go back to the landing page. So we can have like a good back and forth there. So from product page, click. You now have your prototype for the landing page. How about this one? Same. Retrieve, go back. So that's how you prototype on Figma.